Smoke cool so it won't burn your hand. If it burns your hand, it'll burn the bees. You always need to smoke your bees just a little bit to distract them so you can enter their home. If you smoke the smoke with real hot smoke, it burns their wings. It always needs to be cool smoke. Pollen, honey, the open cells, and we'll turn it over. Same on the other side. This is bird comb. I'm feeding the bees sugar water to encourage them to raise more bees, to have more brood. We'll go over and open up another hive and we'll see some brood. The frames from an 8-frame hive to a 10-frame hive, so they'll have more room. Take a picture of the bees. These are all worker bees that we see. They're drawing out the wax, and while we're picking up the frames, we're going to be looking for the queen. When you have a virgin queen in the colony, you need drones for her to mate with. She'll mate with on several different days. She'll mate with 15 to 20 drones, and that's the sperm that she receives in her lifetime. Yep, it's all capped brood right here. This is a good laying queen. And this right here is a queen cell. Now, the queen is right below my finger there. She's placing her head in a cell, and if it suits her needs, she'll do a hop, skip, and a squat, and she'll lay an egg in that cell, if it suits her. She looks like she's having trouble coming out. The queen. She has a Miss America walk. When she walks, the bees usually part and form a daisy around her when she's walking around. This is a drone right next to her, but he only mates with the queen out in the air. There's another drone there. She's looking for cells to lay in. She's checking every cell to lay. She can lay 1,000, 1,500 eggs a day if the colony needs the eggs to grow bees, to raise bees. It takes a cell of honey and a cell of water for the bees to raise another bee. They keep the inside of the brood hive at 94 degrees. The humidity is about 50%. Hi, Gary. These are drone cells right here and right here also. Beekeepers, they love to talk about their hobby. And we have a lot of newbies. Like I mentioned a while ago, it was 115 at Oatland Island, and we have a lot of new beekeepers in the club. I don't think we have but 4 or 5 members that have had bees for over 10 years in the club right now. The colony collapse disorder in the newspaper and on TV has brought it to the attention of the public. And a lot of people are interested in organic gardening. They're interested in keeping bees to help the ecology. And I think that's one reason we've had an explosion of new beekeepers or people wanting to get into beekeeping. All right, this is brood. Baby bees. Pollen and honey around the top. There's the queen. See the queen? Can you see her okay?
Yes.
I need to put her back down since we know she's there. And I didn't see any queen cells or any problems. What I'm doing is placing a screen bottom board underneath this hive. The powdered sugar falls on the bees and it encourages the bees to groom themselves. And if there's any varroa mite on the bees, it dislodges the varroa mite and falls off and falls to the screen bottom board and falls to the ground. Suck the nectar from the jar and they'll take it down into the cells. One of the things we haven't discussed is what do we do for our bees. We have gone from solid bottom boards to screen bottom boards. We use an 1/8 inch hardware cloth. And we keep our entrances reduced, and each time we open the hive, and we should do it over a period of 4 different times, 5 days apart, and we use powdered sugar, and we use a sifter, and we sift the top bars with the bees on it, and they groom themselves, and they groom that varroa mite off of their body, and it falls down through the screen bottom board. And also, the small African hive beetle larva falls through that screen. And then the fire ants get them on the ground. And that's the only medication we use. Now there's some beekeepers using some approved and not approved chemicals in the hive. But sometimes it causes the queens to be sterile. But most of the beekeepers in our area, the only thing we're doing for the bees is helping them with nutrition, feeding them sugar water when they don't have enough honey, and using the powdered sugar method. Now, right in this area, in the bottom of the cells, there's lots of eggs. And we know the queen's here because there's eggs. 3 days an egg, 6 days a larva. The worker bees cap that cell, and then 21 days later, a worker hatches out. When the bees bring back in the pollen and nectar, they do a waggle tail dance. And straight up is towards the sun, to the right or left is to the right or the left of the sun. The intensity of the waggle indicates the amount of source. The length of the waggle is the distance. Dr. Von Fisk, back in the 40s, did research on honeybees and their language. And with the experiments he did, he found that they didn't have any words or dance for height. They put sugar water dishes and raised them up in the air on a balloon, and they couldn't find them. And it's interesting to know, or to be able to find out, if the bees up in New York City living on top of the skyscrapers and the gardens and the terraces up there, if they've learned a new word or phrase for where their home is and how high up it is. Because they go several miles to gather pollen and nectar from rooftop to rooftop or to Central Park. And there's 900 beekeepers in the city of New York. The worker goes out and gathers the pollen, comes back and does a waggle tail dance, and that tells the other bees where she found the pollen. Now this queen is looking in each cell as she walks by, and if the cell suits her, she'll lay an egg in it. And if it doesn't suit her, she'll go to and try to find another one. We need to put her back inside because it's hot out here in the sun. We carefully push them back so they won't be too tight, and we don't want to injure her. Now what I'm going to do is pull this back out and put this frame in the center. This has a little bit of honey on it, and that will encourage her to go ahead and start laying in this frame. We should be marking the queens as we see them, but I didn't bring my marker with me. That way we know it'll be easier to find her the next time we look. This is a beetle trap. We put vegetable oil in the beetle trap to capture the beetles. And there's several different beetle traps. There's a couple of different types that fit at the top bar. There's a beetle trap that goes at the bottom of the hive, and the beetles crawl through the 1/8" hardware cloth and get down in the vegetable oil, and they get stuck up and they drown. The beetle trap at the top of the hive has vinegar and vegetable oil, and they are attracted to the vegetable oil, and they go in and they get stuck up and they drown. What this is, a queen excluder, and we put the queen excluder on the hive, and it discourages the queen from going up into the honey boxes. In this particular case, I didn't want her laying up here in the upper brood box because I want to save it and give it to another hive. This weighs about 60 pounds. I should have put this on when I had it lifted, but I forgot to. Honey from the honeybees has all types of enzymes that are good for us. Honey is nature's most perfect food. They're using honey over in Russia to sterilize cuts and burns, and they're using honey with surgery. And there's some honey that comes from Australia and New Zealand that has even more medicinal properties than the local honey that we have. The darker the honey, the bee scientists tell us, has more minerals and vitamins. There's rumors around that they found honey in the pyramids that was still good. And I think that was just a rumor that they started to sell honey. But honey does have a shelf life. If it gathers too much moisture, if it's left open, it'll first turn to alcohol, and then it will turn to vinegar. There's not any germs that make us sick that can live in a honey culture. There's other products in the honey hive that are beneficial. The bee bread is healthy. It has the bees bring the pollen in. They store it in the cell, add enzymes to it, and it goes through a fermentation process, and then it's more digestible for the bees to eat them. And it's the same with us. We can't digest pollen unless it's been fermented. We want the smoke real cool. If it's real hot, it'll burn their wings off. Beekeepers, there's paintings on the caves over in Europe where the people in antiquity were using torches to smoke the bees so they could steal their honey. Can the microphone hear the bees humming?
Yes.
We're taking this burr comb off because if we don't, it'll be in our way after a while. The other product in the hive is Propolis, the bee glue. And when you're sampling honey out of the beehive, if it has a little bit of bee glue on it and you chew that honeycomb up and that bee glue gets on your teeth, it's so sticky that it has to wear off. It doesn't clean off easy. They've taken the Propolis and put it on a petri dish with the HIV viruses, and it has killed the HIV virus. The bees take the sticky substances from trees, add enzymes to it, and they varnish the inside of the hive with it. They fill all the cracks with Propolis. Bee space is 1/4 of an inch to 5/16. If the bees can't crawl through it, it's 1/4 of an inch, they'll use the Propolis, or the bee glue, to seal it up. So if it's moisture coming in from outside, that keeps the moisture out, and it also keeps the colony safe, the Propolis does. And the bees living in such close quarters, the Propolis is an antibiotic that keeps them healthy. And they say if it's a rough hive on the inside, they'll use more Propolis. If it's real smooth, they won't use the Propolis. The 5/16 of an inch, if the bees find that it's a little bit too big, they'll put burr comb in it. And with the bee space, 1/4 of an inch, 5/16, they place the comb 1 3/8 apart. And we've learned as beekeepers that if we put a frame in there, and it's 1 3/8 from center to center of the wax comb lid, the bees will build it out into perfect comb for us. Sometimes we forget to leave a frame out that has the beeswax in it, and the bees will put their own comb in there. And then when you lift the lid, it's a sticky mess, and they tell you about it. This is drone brood that's sticking up right here. We'll turn it over. This is more drone brood. The bees need 10-15% drones in a colony. And if he ever has the opportunity, he'll go out and mate with a virgin queen. This is the queen cell, but there's not an egg in it yet. This colony is very crowded. Well, it's any colony that's strong is a potential get after you and sting you. And we're handling the bees gently, so there shouldn't be any problem. And we have another queen cell, and it has an egg in it. On the bottom of the frames are swarm cells. They're getting ready to supersede this queen because she's probably got some age on her. Now, since we've got several queen cells, I'm going to split this colony up. When the colony gets overcrowded, it's nature's way for them to swarm. They'll raise several queen cells on the outer edge of the frames, and the old queen and most of the bees will leave. They'll go out and hang on a bush. They'll send out scouts and come back and tell the other bees that they like this particular location to move to. They vote on it and they move. They swarm each year. It's nature's way of multiplying. The old queen leaves with a lot of bees, and she leaves several queen cells, and they raise the queens, the virgin queens. They go out and mate, and another colony is started. This is birth comb. That little white larva is drone larva, and I don't see any varroa mite in it, and that's what I was looking for. I'm going to brush these bees off so they'll go in. I'm putting the green dry grass in the entrance so they'll can't get out for a day or so, and then when they do get out, they'll stay here. I'm making a note so I'll know what I did, because I can't remember. Or don't remember. putting back empty frames so she'll have a place to lay. And then we'll make a note on our she releases the sting pheromone, and the sting pheromone encourages the bees to attack. Here. She might be too young to sting. She's too young. The stinger's barbed. It has two little stilettos that work their way deeper into the flesh, and her sting sac is attached to the stinger, and it releases an acetone odor that causes the other bees to want to sting in the same place. Now, I haven't been stung today except 2 times. One time accidentally, and just then when I injected that stinger in. Can you see it throbbing? To remove the stinger, you need to scratch it off. If you pinch it, you inject more venom into your skin. My grandfather had honeybees. My papa had honeybees. I never cared anything about keeping honeybees. But in 1968, I found out I had rheumatoid arthritis. And we found a book at the public library, Vermont Folk Medicine and Arthritis. And we started drinking 2 tablespoons of vinegar and 2 tablespoons of honey and a glass of water with each meal. And it was about 1971, and I stopped taking the prescription medicine. In 1974, we bought a barrel of honey, 600 pounds. It lasted about 2 years. Then in 1975, we got a call. There was a swarm of bees on a bush in front of the Garden City Hall over on Main Street in Garden City. And we went and picked up that swarm of bees, and we pestered them to death and killed them. 76, we ended up with 3 hives. The next year we had 9. Next year we had 27. And the most bees we've had at one time is around 170 colonies. And that year we extracted 5 barrels of honey. And it was the late 80s. We knew we wouldn't be able to keep our bees and move up to Winfield, Georgia, so I sold them all. We sold 70 colonies, and when I moved up there, we still had about 25 colonies. We collected swarms, took them out of people's houses, and just had fun. Meeting we had at Oatland Island, February 26, with the 115 attendees, everybody commented that they learned something. And it was an excellent meeting. People realize that 1/3 of our food that we eat is a responsibility of the honeybee pollinating. And it could be that CCD, the colony collapse disorder, is an indication of the canary in the coal mine that our ecology is in trouble. Because if we don't have bees, we won't have any food. And we need to change subjects. The best time of the year in southeast Georgia, in Effingham, Bryan, Chatham County, is the springtime. The bees, in the fall of the year, the queen stops laying about before Thanksgiving. Then right after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, she'll start laying again. And she's capable of laying 1,000, 1,500 eggs a day, depending on the circumstances and the need. The bees go out, they gather the pollen and nectar, and this part of Georgia, the bees can collect nectar every week of the year. And the bees, for the honeybees, this is their fun time of the year. They just have so much fun, they work themselves to death. And then around Savannah, there's many bee trees and bees living in people's homes. And those honeybees have survived from their own natural selection. The strongest survive. And those feral colonies are excellent colonies. They're just good, hard-working bees. Now, from time to time, we'll find a colony that's real mean. And so we requeen them, and requeen them with a gentle queen. Nationwide, there's several types of queens that the queen breeders have bred for. There's Minnesota Hygienics, New World, Carnodian, Wilbanks over in Claxton, he has Italian bees. They've imported some Russian bees. Overall, though, our local feral colonies are excellent bees. They're good, hard-working bees. They go out and gather the nectar, and every flower has a different flavor with the honey that they bring in. In our area, we have a lot of farmers around, and they spray their crops. There's soybean, cotton, and other crops. But our biggest concern in the Chatham County area is the mosquito control. And when the mosquito control truck comes through, any of the bees that are on the outside of the hive, they die. The wild bees out in the trees, they get killed by the mosquito control also. Any bees that are outside, when that poison in the air drifts through like a cloud, it kills them. William Harms has a bee yard over on the Geechee Road near the Savannah-Geechee Canal. 204 is where his yard is. And when the mosquito truck drives by on the highway, that insecticide drifts through the woods, and he has a bee kill each time. And mosquito control is coming to our next meeting to talk with us and try to help us to keep from killing the honeybees. They also use a helicopter and an airplane. Now, the CCD, the colony collapse disorder that we're having a problem with here in America, the bee scientists are analyzing the bees that are left in the colony, and they haven't give us a final answer on what the problem is, but they suspect it's a combination of viruses that they get from the varroa mite, fungicides, and when the bees go out and gather pollen and nectar, they bring it back to the colony and they store it in the wax cells. And the pollen and nectar that has that insecticide in it leaves a residue in the wax. The wax acts as a sponge, and it will continue to kill bees later on in years to come. And some of the insecticides are having a synergistic effect. When they're combined, they'll kill many more times bees than if just one of the chemicals were present. Back in the 70s, we had the trachea mite coming into the United States. It gets in the bees' breathing tube. Then in the 80s, late 80s, we had the varroa mite appear. But the varroa mite hasn't really been a problem with the viruses until just recently. And then we had the small African hive beetle come in, and it was in the mid-90s. And it is not as much fun keeping bees now as it used to be with the different pests and problems that we're having with bees. You used to could catch a swarm, put it in a box, put a honey super on it, collect some honey. And now you have to constantly monitor the colony to see what their health is. Many beekeepers are feeding a nutrition supplement along with the sugar water. It takes a cell of honey, a cell of pollen, and a cell of water for them to raise another bee.